Okay, here we are in our first class. We've got the technical issues straight now. Our first class of 2024. And welcome. Thank you all for your association on this evening. Let's begin the class with our invocation mantras to show our gratitude and respect to our teacher and teachers that are illuminating our path with the torchlight of knowledge. Om Jnanatimrandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshuro Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Tarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare Om Jnanatimrandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. So, for those of you who are just joining me, I'd like to remind you that all previous classes are on my huge YouTube channel, Larry Puglisi. And we've done 15 complete chapters now. and we're on chapter 16, which is a very interesting chapter. I have a lot to say about this, mostly for clarification. Okay. So, Madan Mohan Prabhu, if you, I think you have to mute yourself there. It seems like you're. Okay. So the chapter title is The Divine and Demoniac Natures. In describing the previous chapter, we were talking about, if you remember, the banyan tree of the material world. The metaphor used in Gita of this material world is a banyan tree that is reflected into a lake. So when you look at the reflection, you see an upside down banyan tree, and the real banyan tree is right side up. So Krishna uses that as a metaphor that the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. And those tree branches and tree roots are going the opposite way. Tree roots seemingly going up and tree branches going down. So that is to define this material world, which is considered by the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna, the spokesperson for the Bhagavad Gita, as it's inverted. And how it's inverted is our desires to please the self is actually an inversion of the reality, which means that we have desires, but our desires in reality are as an offering are meant to please the Supreme. So the 15th chapter also discusses about the modes of material natures, sattva gun, rajagun, tamagun, or goodness, passion, ignorance. And this is the force, the energy, the influence of the material elements upon the soul, the self that is enveloped by the material elements and has the pushing. It pushes us in particular directions. Actually, according to the Gita, what is really acting in the material world are the modes of material nature. That we are simply the observers, and because of our finite position, we are being influenced to act in a particular way and to think in a particular way, so both psychologically and physiologically. The gunas, or the modes of material nature, are forcing us to act. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha. That these are the what are the cause of our actions and our inclinations and our predispositions. And that is as far as reality is concerned, is opposite. That the real cause is typified or expressed when we are showing our desire to please the Supreme. So chapter 15 discussed how the three modes of material nature combine to nourish the various branches of this metaphoric tree. Chapters 16 and 17 describe the higher and lower branches, or our higher and lower nature. Just like the moon. The moon is beautiful, we are beautiful, but the moon also has a dark side, and we also have a dark side. And the dark side is due to the influences of rajagun and tamagun, or passion and ignorance. Our bright side, our light, beautiful side, is typified by sattvagun, or the mode of goodness. And all of us have the tendency and the ability to be sattvic. But the tendency or the ability is, as we are experiencing it, is both karmic and cultivate it. In other words, karmically, we come into this world with some baggage, and that baggage gives us our inclinations, our nature, and we live out according to that karma. But also, we cultivate through lifestyle, through diet, through association. We also cultivate our mentality, our psyche. And this way, due to the cultivation, we become conditioned in a particular way that gives us our inclinations. In other words, some people are inclined toward their dark side, and other people are inclined towards their bright side or the sattvic side. And some people are in between, influenced by their dark side or influenced by their bright side. So this is, like I said, karmically, we are in this position. And because we are in that position, karmically, we take the birth in the particular body that we have, the particular family, in the area, the location that we have. All of these things are due to our karmic influence. And because of that, in other words, you take birth in a particular family, that means you're going to cultivate a certain kind of mentality due to that influence, because influence is everything. We have the saying that you birds of a feather flock together, so that influence is there too, which causes us to cultivate a certain mindset, a certain lifestyle, a certain predisposition to things, until we reach a certain age where we are more apt to think more freely and have the ability to think outside the box, and have the ability to exercise our intelligence. When we're young, we're pretty much motivated and driven by the influences around us. I remember, my aha day was, I was around maybe 20 or 21, still in college. And I remember, thinking that there must be something more to life than what I was experiencing, due to the family I was in and the friends that I had developed during my youth. I began to question, and the question, questioning your life and your lifestyle is indicative of, the desire to look into the reality of your situation. What is real and what is not real? So this divine and demoniac natures, which will be discussed by Krishna, will give us an indication of how to recognize our bright side and our dark side. So the first three verses that Krishna gives us in the Bhagavad Gita, let me just go to my notes here. The first three verses, Krishna talks about what is divine as opposed to what is demoniac. And I wanted to just say that we have to be careful when we use words. Sometimes when people say, oh, you're either divine or demoniac, that seems to be very cut and dry and so black and white, and we're really not of that nature. And the answer is yes, but we have to understand how the words are being used, because this is Sanskrit, which is being translated into English. So the English words don't necessarily always hit the nail right on the head. So a little discussion about divine and demoniac. So Krishna is going to talk about divine from the perspective of Gita. Divine means godly, that individual that has a tendency to want to be good and godly, godlike. In other words, have the qualities of kindness and compassion and respect. It's manifest as much as possible. So divine actually is in reference to that. Godly would be a good synonym for divine as spoken about in Bhagavad Gita. See, because the word divine has its roots in Latin and Greek, and also demon or demoniac, Krishna's going to talk about it later on, also has its roots in Latin and Greek. And quite often, a lot of the meanings of a word, particularly when we're talking about spirituality, and particularly if you're from the Western Hemisphere, has a Abrahamic religion connotation, which Abrahamic religions are in reference to Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. So they quite often, the philosophers of those traditions have placed particular definitions that have carried over into our culture, the culture that we're raised in, Christian culture, or Jewish culture, or Islamic culture, etc. So when we talk about divine and demoniac, basically what we're speaking from the Gita's perspective, divine means godly, and demoniac means that we are not looking to live a godly life, that we're more concerned with, living a more whimsical life. In other words, one of the attributes of godliness is there's a regulated life according to Scripture, given to us by God Himself through the medium of sacred texts. There's lifestyle adjustments to be made, and so many different things, which gives us a regulated and very structured lifestyle. Whereas in a demoniac, there's no real credence given to sacred texts. One lives as one desires. So that will not necessarily place an emphasis or prioritize our developing the spiritual side, or the bright side of the moon that we are. But rather than, we are more interested in just our own pleasure. Pleasure is the priority. How I can have pleasure, that becomes the priority. So when Krishna talks about divine and demoniac, the priority of the divine or divine state of mind is the cultivation of godly qualities, relationship, and our understanding of who God is, what our relationship is to God, etc. So this would be more akin to the divine nature that Krishna is going to speak about in these first 3 verses. So I'll read them because they're here in the Gita, Prabhupada's edition, together. So verses 1, 2, and 3 read as follows. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, nonviolence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities. And when you'll see that both in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and Bhagavad Gita, when there is a reference to compassion, it means for all living entities. That means trees, birds, bees, animals, grass, anything, any life force, and how it manifests. there is an awareness of the fact that it has life force because the presence of the soul. So that's what Krishna is talking about here when he says compassion for all living entities. Freedom from covetousness. Covetousness means being greedy. So when you have this desire for things for yourself, this like inordinate, this outrageous desire for things for yourself, a greediness, then
Like your house, like
that
your
is,
car.
hello? Yeah, Jai Krishna, your microphone was on. Um, this greediness, and this is called freedom from covetousness. This is one of the divine qualities that one does not want to be greedy. Gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, which is like a strength, forgiveness, fortitude. Vigor is like an energy, and fortitude is a strength. Cleanliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness, is the old saying. And freedom from envy, and freedom from envy, and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. So let's just briefly go over those qualities and try to understand them. The first one that Krishna mentions is fearlessness. Now, what does this actually mean, fearlessness? Because when one is on the spiritual platform, then the word in Sanskrit that's used is abhay, fearless. Abhay means fearful, and we know when we looked at their common fears that people experience in this world are what? Fear of abandonment. No one wants to be abandoned, especially when we're a child. When a child feels abandoned, that has devastating effects on their psyche, on their emotions through the rest of their life. So fear of abandonment, fear of loss of identity. I don't have an identity. I don't know who I am. And loss of meaning or purpose of life, loss of purpose, that's the next one, and fear of death. These are all very strong and dominant fears that people experience. Fear of abandonment, fear of pain, fear of suffering, which leads to death, fear of loss, so I'm going to lose. I was told once, I believe it was by Ambarish, he's of the famous Ford family, that the very, very wealthy have a kind of a psychological illness that they struggle with, and that's fear of loss. Even though they may be worth $500 million, they have this constant fear of losing that money and living in poverty. So you can imagine if that's there, how all-consuming that can be. Fear of abandonment. If you're abandoned when you're a child, in other words, abandonment doesn't necessarily mean you don't have the physical association of your parents or family, but it can mean that your parents are guilty of emotionally abandoning you, not giving you the love and care that you need. That will have devastating effects throughout the course of our life. So that fear of abandonment, loss of identity, for many reasons, people have this struggle with identity. Who am I? We see now that gender is a big topic. Young people struggling with whether they're male or female, having a gender crisis, a gender identity. You see it regularly in the news, and of course there are a lot of psychological studies, etc. So gender identity is there a lot. So loss of identity. Who am I? And basically that can be a very bad thing, but it can be a very good thing if it's used in who am I? What is my purpose in being here? What is my purpose in life? So that really is not loss of identity. It really means seeking one's true identity. It's a difference. When we feel that we've lost our identity, we don't know our sexuality, we have no identity with family or country or ethnicity or anything like that. That's one thing, but trying to understand our eternal identity, that is actually our nature. When we are seeking that kind of answer, that when we are searching for our real identity, that means we are stepping into another realm of existence. Now we are asking questions like, who am I? What is my purpose in being in this world? What is it that I should be doing in this world, etc. So there's, two ways you can look at loss of identity. One is, on the material platform, or the other one is a search for identity, which may indicate loss of identity. That means being conditioned in such a way to forget that we're pure spirit soul and only be in relationship with the body and the mind as we know. And that is the cause, according to Bhagavad Gita, that is the cause of our suffering, is the fact that we are not identifying with who we really are, but rather the illusion. We're identifying with the illusion. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, what is truth? That which has no end. What is illusion? That which has no duration. It's temporary. That is what Krishna defines as truth and illusion. Truth meaning having no end. So what is the truth of our existence? Well, the body has an end. So according to the definition in Bhagavad Gita, the body is not truth. It's truth in the sense of being temporary. We're temporarily residing in this body. So that's the truth. But as far as eternally in this body, we know that that is not going to happen, that this body is going to age, and after aging to a certain point, it's going to die. So Gita says that which has no cessation, no end, that is truth, that is reality. So what makes us up, if we take Gita for its word, then what is our reality? Our reality is the self. And that's why you hear the term self-realization, to realize what is the self. Because objectively, what the body is made of, the elements of earth, water, fire, air, ether, and what the subtle body is made of, mind, intelligence, ego, those elements are called material elements, and they have no ability to be self-aware. So when we talk about self-realization, and we think that we're the body, but the elements are not able to be self-aware, they have no awareness. So that is erroneous to think that. So what does have the ability to be aware? The self, the soul, the Atma, the Jiva. That has to be. Patanjali calls it drashtu, after he talks about what is, will give us the ability to realize the self. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha. How can we become peaceful and calm so we can see ourselves and see the drashtu? or the observer, the seer. That means to step back from identification with the temporary, the body, the mind, to step back and to look at it from the perspective or from the vantage point of the observer, the drashtu, that which has the ability to be aware. Not only now in this body, you are conscious of the fact of who you are, your name, your family, your body type, your gender. You're aware of those things. So why limit yourself to only the awareness of what's temporary? Why limit yourself? Because we have the ability, according to Bhagavad Gita and other sacred texts, to be aware of our eternal self, to be the drastu, to be the observer, the seer. We have that ability. It's only our conditioning, our conditioned state, that is causing us not to be aware of the self, our true nature. And that's what yoga is all about. And the system of bhakti yoga is through practicing, cultivating a sadhana of love and devotion and service to the Supreme, we can actually become self-realized. We can see ourselves in relationship to the Supreme. Because love is a noun and love is a verb. So love is an emotion, but love is also an expression of that emotion. And that is what bhakti is, the cultivation of a yoga system that teaches us how to express the love emotion for the Supreme Lord, Supreme God. So fearlessness, what does Krishna mean by that? Why is that a divine or godly quality? Because it will help us to see beyond the temporary and become aware of our eternal self. And then how can we fear death? We don't die. How can we fear death? If we have the realization that we don't die, then there's no fear of that. There's no fear of disease. I mean, disease may be a condition that will occur to these bodies, but it will not be a condition of the soul. I've had the good fortune to be at the side of my teacher, my spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, right prior to his leaving this world, and was able to see fearlessness. That even though his body was dwindling and eventually it was going to cease, which happened in November 14th, 1977. But there was no fear of that. Contrary to that, I was at the bedside of my father, whose eyes were fearful because all he knew, all he cultivated his entire life was awareness of his body and the demands of his senses and his mind. So when that was coming to an end, there was fear in his eyes. But when you looked into the eyes of Srila Prabhupada, there was no fear. There was only compassion, love for all living beings. And he wanted to be there for us, but he knew he was there for us through sound vibration. Having association with a saintly personality can be achieved two ways, Vapu and Vani. Vapu means personal association, and Vani means through sound. And that's why Srila Prabhupada made the effort to translate all of these sacred texts of the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Sri Upanishad, all these texts, so that we could have the benefit of his commentaries, his thoughts on each and every verse, and have that Vani even to this day. So those of you who have not been, had that good fortune, you do have that good fortune through Vani, through studying of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, the Sri Upanishad, and all the sacred texts. You'll have that good fortune. You haven't missed the boat. You've actually stepped foot on the boat. So fearlessness, we discussed that. Purification of one's existence. That basically is through lifestyle. We purify our existence. And lifestyle physically, and lifestyle mentally, and lifestyle intellectually. How we cultivate a lifestyle which is a lifestyle of purification. Now, when we talk about our body, according to Ayurveda, there's the ability to detoxify the body. That the body becomes toxic when we don't eat properly, when we don't sleep properly, when our lifestyle is as such as it brings toxicity to the body. And from the Ayurvedic perspective, toxicity to the body will cause disease. So we live a certain lifestyle which helps to purify and cleanse the body. We adjust our lifestyle so that there's purification of mind and intellect. And that is the real value of yoga. Because in yoga, we are cultivating a lifestyle, a sadhana, a system or a discipline. We're following a system or discipline which helps us to cultivate purification of the mind and the intellect. And freedom from ego, false ego in particular. False ego means identification with the body as the self. And that is due to toxicity, the conditioned state of existence that we're in, that we've been conditioned to be in. So sadhana, the practice of yoga, in bhakti yoga, it's chanting, it's study of sacred texts, it's having the association of saintly personalities, it's going to very sacred places, and in turn creating your home into a sacred place, and in turn creating your heart into a sacred place. And also doing the various rituals which help us to meditate on the Supreme. So those 5 things are very strong purificatory factors in terms of the bhakti yoga system. So purification, Krishna says, of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge. This is called swadhyaya. Also, Patanjali recommends that in his Yoga Sutras. Krishna is talking about here, swadhyaya. Swadhyaya means study of sacred texts. Swadhyaya means also study of the self. Study of the self, study of sacred texts go hand in hand, because true study of the self, true understanding of the self is brought to light by the study of sacred texts. That's why we say, Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. There are 3 things that we incorporate in our life which help to illuminate our life. That's the study of sacred texts, the hearing from holy people, those that are realized, those who are advanced spiritually, both in the form of teacher and previous holy or sages, previous wise people. We study their lifestyle example, their teachings, etc. Those 3 things, those are the cultivation of knowledge, Krishna is saying here. Charity, giving in charity. Now, giving in charity doesn't mean you just give randomly or whimsically. Giving in charity also means you give to a good cause, a cause that not only has beneficial effects in the here and now, but also spiritually. So charity or being charitably disposed means that you can help people not only to help their body or help their mind, but also to help them realize the true nature of the self. That's why it is very charitable to give someone a Bhagavad Gita, a sacred text like that, which can illuminate their understanding. So giving of knowledge, Ben Franklin said, is one of the things that you one investment that you cannot lose on. So charity, that means giving. Giving, there's two things, shreyas and preyas. Preyas means immediate benefit, and shreyas means ultimate benefit. So when we give in charity, we have to think of those two things. That which has immediate benefit, but also that which has ultimate benefit, lasting benefit. So how can you do that? If a person is hungry, immediately you can feed them. But if you feed them prasadam, and prasadam means food which has been offered in sacrifice to the Lord, then that becomes blessed. So when you give someone that kind of food, it goes beyond just nourishment of the body and the senses and the mind, but it actually nourishes the soul. So through the system of bhakti, we can very easily see charity, how we can be charitable in the shreyas perspective, the ultimate perspective. Charity. Self-control. Yoga means control of the self, control of the mind. Yogas chittas vritti narodaha, controlling the mind so that the mind becomes peaceful. What's the purpose? Just to be peaceful? No, it's not just to be peaceful, but it means that you are peaceful in such a way that you can meditate on the true nature of the self and meditate on the true nature of the supreme self, the Paramatma, the supersoul within the heart, or Bhagawan, the supreme personality of Godhead, that your mind can become peaceful. And therefore, not just that as the goal and you stop there, peaceful so that you can enter deeply into meditation. So peacefulness, narodaha, can be obtained by having an alambana. An alambana means an object of meditation. You've probably had the experience in your work or in your study where you're really, really concentrating on something. Have you had that experience? Where you're really, really concentrating, you're just lost in concentration. And you find that you're single pointed. So that kind of single pointedness, that kind of concentration, that one pointedness, that is the kind of mindset we need when we're doing our meditation. Because, there's a lot of vrittis going on. There's a lot of churning and turning of the mind. Oh, so many thoughts, etc. So when you're meditating, how do you deal with that? Self-control, by cultivating self-control, by following the yogic system, by practicing meditation on an alambana. For us, in our particular lineage of Bhakti Yoga, one of the primary methods for fixing the mind on the Supreme is japa, chanting the holy names of the Supreme. And in this particular day and age, Krishna who came to this world over 500 years ago in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he recommended that as the primary method for self-realization. So what are we obliged to do? Cultivate a lifestyle, get into a system, a sadhana system, where you can sit with your alambana, your object of meditation, your chanting of japa. And in our particular lineage, it's the Hare Krishna mantra. Fix the mind on that and see the peace that comes from that and the ability to dive deeply into that sound vibration. So self-control, performance of sacrifice. What does that mean? Performance of sacrifice means gratitude. That means all that we do, all that we eat, all that we offer, all that we give away, all that we receive, we have a mindset of gratitude. So like even when we're eating, we are grateful. How do we show that great gratitude? By performance of sacrifice. What is that? It is we make a conscious offering through meditation, through prayer, recognizing from whence everything came. We did not create the seeds. We did not create the sky, the sunlight, the earth, the water, the air, which gives sustenance, nourishment to all the fruits and the vegetables and grains and all of these things that people take in for nourishment. So just the simple fact of recognition of the Supreme in relationship to that, all that's provided to us, that is a kind of sacrifice. What you're doing right now is a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice of your time. You don't have to be here. You can be anywhere. You could be watching TV or going to the movies or at a bar. You could be so many different places. You consciously chose to sacrifice your time to hear Bhagavad Gita. That's sacrifice. So in many ways, we sacrifice for our ultimate benefit. Again, the word Shreyas. There's sacrifices that we make for our immediate benefit. There's sacrifices that we make for our ultimate benefit. And what you're doing right now is sacrifice. So practice of sacrifice, Krishna says this is of the divine nature. Performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, of course, Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Purana, the Upanishads. These are all parts of the Vedic literatures, and to study that and to meditate. One very good practice, to meditate on one verse of the Gita every day. Just pick a verse, meditate on it. Try to get into the deeper meaning of that verse. That's a very good meditation. That's why I love these Wednesdays, because and I love all of you for being here and helping me with my meditation, because all day I'm meditating on the Gita. What's the topic for tonight? What are the verses that we're going to be going over? So it becomes, it's just like how water goes to all the cracks, it fills in. So whenever I may be doing something, I may be cooking, but if there's a moment where I step back, then tonight's Gita class, what am I going to say? Just like water goes and fills in. So it's a really potent, powerful meditation. So study. Austerity. Austerity means voluntarily, for a higher purpose, giving up something. In other words, not eating too much, not eating too little, finding the balance. That's an austerity. Sleep, not sleeping too much,